This is the story of Mulan. Many years ago, China was in the middle of a great war. The emperor said that each Chinese family must give one man to fight in the army. Mulan heard this news when she was outside washing clothes. She ran inside the house. "Father, did you hear the news?" she said. "I did," said her old father sadly. "I saw a poster in town." "Well, I must go pack now," and he walked away very slowly. "But father," said Mulan, "you have not been well. If you go, I fear you will not come back. Why in your old age should you have to keep up with all those young men?" "Ah," said her father with a sigh, "we have no choice but to do as our emperor commands. Your brother is a child. Surely he cannot go." "Of course," said Mulan. "But wait! There may be another way." Mulan went to the next room. With one stroke of a sword, she cut off her hair, and then she put on her father's robe. Standing before her father, Mulan said, "I am your son now." "No, my dear," said her father, "you cannot do this." "I must, and I will," said Mulan. "For years you have trained me in Kung Fu. You've taught me how to use a sword." Mulan swung the sword back and forth with might. "Only so you could defend yourself," said her father. "I never meant for you to go to war, and if you are found out to be a woman, you will surely die." "No one will find out, father," said Mulan. She picked up the sword and climbed on a horse. She kissed her father goodbye, and off she went to join the emperor's army. Year after year, Mulan served in the army. She fought so bravely that she was put in charge of a group of soldiers. Then she became in charge of more and even more soldiers. At last, Mulan was given the job to be the general of the army. Not long after that, a terrible fever swept through the army. Many soldiers became ill, and so was Mulan. When the doctor came out of Mulan's tent, he knew the truth about their general. "The general is a woman?" yelled the soldiers. "How can this be?" Some called out, "She tricked us, and we will not fight for a woman, and punish her." But yet others called out in voices just as loud, "With Mulan we win every battle, and let our general be." Just then a soldier ran up. "An attack," he called, "a surprise attack." Mulan heard this news from inside her tent. Quickly she dressed and went outside. She was not well yet, but she stood tall. She told the soldiers where they must go to hide and attack the enemy. But they must move fast. The soldiers, even those who did not like that their general was a woman, could tell that Mulan knew exactly what she was talking about. It worked. The battle was won, and China was saved. You can be sure that after that battle, no one cared that Mulan was a woman. The emperor was glad. He gave Mulan many fine gifts. "Please stay with me in the palace," he said, "and be my advisor." Mulan bowed deeply. "Thank you," she said, "but what I wish most of all is to return home to my family." "At least take your gifts," said the emperor. So Mulan returned to her family with 6 fine horses behind her, and took with her 6 fine swords. Everyone cheered that she was safe, and that the one who had saved China was their very own Mulan. If you enjoyed this story, you can find more. This is the fairy tale story of the Velveteen Rabbit, or How Toys Became Real. A soft and fluffy Velveteen Rabbit lived in a toy box in a boy's room. Each day the boy opened the toy box and picked up Velveteen Rabbit, and Velveteen Rabbit was happy. Then newer, brighter toys came into the toy box. They had special tricks. Some would move when the boy pushed a button. Others bounced high. Velveteen Rabbit had no special tricks or buttons. No wonder the boy started to choose these other new toys. At night, when the toys were back all in the toy box, the other toys talked with pride about the fine things they could do. Velveteen Rabbit was quiet. There was not much to say. Only one other toy in the toy box was like Velveteen Rabbit. Skin Horse was also a soft, fluffy toy, but he was old. Most of his hair was worn away. He had only one eye left. Skin Horse said to Velveteen Rabbit, "Soft toys like us are the lucky ones. We get loved the most. And when soft toys are loved and loved, we can become real." "What is real?" said Velveteen Rabbit. "Being real is the best," said Skin Horse. "You can move when you want to move. When you are real, if you are loved, you can show your love back." This all sounded fine to Velveteen Rabbit, but how could that ever happen as long as Velveteen Rabbit was stuck in the toy box? After all, the boy was playing with the other toys. One day Nana, who took care of the boy, flew open the lid of the toy box. She said in a busy tone, "Oh dear, that walking doggie is missing. I must find something else." In a second, Velveteen Rabbit was plopped down onto the bed with the boy. This began another happy time for Velveteen Rabbit. Each night the boy would hold Velveteen Rabbit close in his arms. In the morning, the boy would show Velveteen Rabbit how to make rabbit holes under the sheets. If the boy went outside to a picnic or to play at the park, Velveteen Rabbit would come with him too. After a while, with the hugging and holding, much of Velveteen Rabbit's fur got matted down. Its pink nose grew less pink with all the boy's kisses, but Velveteen Rabbit did not care. It was happy. One day the boy became very sick. His forehead was hot. The doctor came and went. Nana walked back and forth in fear. Day after day, the boy stayed in bed. There was nothing for Velveteen Rabbit to do but to stay in bed too, day after day. Then at last, the boy got better. Such joy in the house! The doctor said the boy must go to the shore. How wonderful, thought Velveteen Rabbit. Many times the boy had talked happily about the shore and told of its white sands and big blue ocean. "What about this old bunny?" Nana asked the doctor. "That old thing," said the doctor. "It's full of scarlet fever germs. Burn it at once. Get him a new bunny." So Velveteen Rabbit was thrown into a sack along with the boy's bed sheets and old clothes and a lot of junk. The sack was carried to the backyard. The gardener was told to burn the whole thing. But the gardener was too busy with picking the beans and peas before nightfall, so he left the sack behind. "I will take care of it tomorrow," he said. The sack was not tied at the top, and Velveteen Rabbit fell out. The next day, when the gardener picked up the sack to take it away to be burned, Velveteen Rabbit was left behind. Then it started to rain. Oh, how sad that was for Velveteen Rabbit. So far away from the boy, never again to be nice and cozy together. A tear fell from Velveteen Rabbit's eye over his cheek, and it plopped onto the grass. All at once, at the spot where the tear fell, a beautiful flower grew up. Then the bud of the flower opened. A fairy appeared. "Little Rabbit," said the fairy, "do you know who I am?" "I wish I did," said Velveteen Rabbit. "I am the fairy that takes care of toys that are well loved," said the fairy. By then Velveteen Rabbit was shabby and gray. The boy had loved off all of its whiskers. The pink lining in the ears had long turned gray. Its brown spots, once fresh and bright, were now faded and hard to see. "It is time now for me to make you real," said the fairy. I think I remember real," said Velveteen Rabbit. Now what was it that Skin Horse had said? Ah, yes, Velveteen Rabbit remembered. When you are real, you can move when you want to move. If you are loved, you can love back. With one touch of the fairy's arm, Velveteen Rabbit felt different, tickly. All of a sudden, each one of its 2 legs sewn together tight could move. A fly landed on Velveteen Rabbit's head, and it was itchy. As quick as a wink, that foot was up at the Velveteen Rabbit's head to give a scratch. So this is being real, said Velveteen Rabbit. I can move when I want to. I will show you some new friends, said the fairy. And the fairy took Velveteen Rabbit where several rabbits ran and hopped about. Soon they were all great friends. One day the boy went to the backyard to play. From the trees nearby, a few rabbits stepped out. With care, they hopped close to the boy. One rabbit was brown all over, and another one was all white. A third rabbit had brown spots, most of them faded. The boy thought, "Why, this rabbit looks just like my old bunny that was lost when I got sick." What he didn't know was that it was his very own bunny, come back to see the boy. For he was the reason the Velveteen Rabbit had become real. The end. This is the folktale story of the two brothers. Once there were two brothers who inherited their father's land. The two brothers divided the land in half, and each one farmed his own section. Over time, the older brother married and had 6 children, while the younger brother never married. One night, the younger brother lay awake. "It's not fair that each of us has half the land to farm," he thought. "My brother has 6 children to feed, and I have none. He should have more grain than I do." So that night the younger brother went to his silo, gathered a large bundle of wheat, and climbed the hill that separated the two farms and over to his brother's farm. Leaving the wheat in his brother's silo, the younger brother returned home, feeling quite pleased with himself. Earlier that very same night, the older brother was also lying awake. "It's not fair that each of us has half the land to farm," he thought. "In my old age, my wife and I will have our grown children to take care of us, not to mention grandchildren, while my brother will probably have none. He should at least sell more grain from the fields now, so he can provide for himself with dignity in his old age." So that night, too, he secretly gathered a large bundle of wheat, climbed the hill, left it in his brother's silo, and returned home, feeling quite pleased with himself. The next morning, the younger brother was surprised to see the amount of grain in his barn unchanged. "I must have not taken as much wheat as I had thought," he said. "Tonight, I'll be sure to take more." That very same moment, his older brother was also standing in his barn, musing much the same thoughts. After night fell, each brother gathered a greater amount of wheat from his barn, and in the dark, secretly delivered it to his brother's barn. The next morning, the brothers were again puzzled. "How can I be mistaken?" each one scratched their head. "There's the same amount of grain here as there was before I cleared the pile for my brother. This is impossible. Tonight, I'll make no mistake. I'll take the pile down to the very floor. That way, I'll be sure the grain gets delivered to my brother." The third night, more determined than ever, each brother gathered a large pile of wheat from his barn, loaded it onto a cart, and slowly pulled his haul through the fields and up the hill to his brother's barn. At the top of the hill, under the shadow of a moon, each brother noticed a figure in the distance. Who could it be? When the two brothers recognized the form of the other brother and the load he was pulling behind, they realized what had happened. Without a word, they dropped the ropes to their carts. The two brothers then embraced when they realized what the other brother had done for them. If you enjoyed this story, you can find more